How to Train Your Dragon live-action adaptation coming to theaters in 2025.
What?
The film will be written by Dean DeBlois, who wrote and directed the original animated trilogy, and will be produced by Mark Platt, who appears to have worked on a number of good movies in the past.
Okay, but why though?
When I first read this headline, I had basically no reaction because my mind couldn't process why the thing I was reading existed at all. Like, was there anybody asking for this? While it's cool they got the original writer on board, I don't think it really matters. Maybe I'm being overly pessimistic, but I really believe you could get all of the best actors and filmmakers in the world to work on this, and it wouldn't make a live-action version of How to Train Your Dragon a success. Because the story of those movies was crafted for the medium of animation, it relies on the principles of animation to work. You can't just strip the story of its cartoonish aesthetic and give it a new gritty live-action coat of paint and expect to keep the soul of the original films. For example, can you imagine what a realistic Toothless is gonna look like? Do you think whatever design they come up with could retain even a fraction of the cuteness and expression of the original? In a cartoon, a smiling and expressive animal or creature looks great, because cartoon logic allows for a greater degree of personality for creature characters, as the rules for what an animal is capable of doing are a lot more loose. When we see Toothless sneer and get offended at Hiccup's comments towards him, it doesn't break the immersion of the story because it's a cartoon and we aren't maintaining its believability based on the rules learned from real life. So the question is, can you make a realistic version of Toothless and be able to have him smile, to look angry, to be sad and mournful, to appear determined, to have any emotion at all, and not have it look garish and uncanny and weird?
Nope.
In my opinion, you can't. Like, one of the most compelling parts of the animated trilogy is how Hiccup and Toothless communicate with each other. Their relationship works because of how expressive Toothless is with his funny faces and dynamic posing. They have whole conversations with each other and everything. How is a live-action version of How to Train Your Dragon supposed to capture this dynamic? It will have to be a downgrade given the limitations of live-action realism. And if it's going to be a downgrade, why should I be interested in watching it at all? We've seen this problem before, haven't we? With the 2019 Lion King, the main flaw of that film was all of the characters that were originally animated with so much energy and conveyed such a huge range of feelings were transformed into lifeless, soulless husks that were incapable of conveying even a sliver of emotion, regardless of how much Beyonce was pumped into the soundtrack. Because it turns out real lions don't emote all that much. Though to be honest, I think real lions are actually more expressive than the lifeless 3D puppets in that film. This is beside the fact that finding a convincing, well-rendered dragon in live action is like looking for a diamond in a dumpster. Dragons have been done really well, like twice. Ever. They almost always look bad. About a year ago now I watched The Witcher, and despite having great special effects all around, the dragons in that show were pretty much abysmal, and that had Netflix money behind it. Do you honestly think DreamWorks can outdo Netflix special effects? Maybe. I doubt it though. But honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the bulk of special effects required to make the world of How to Train Your Dragon in live action. In animation, these epic shots of the sea filled with ships and thousands of dragons and villages on the sides of cliffs are relatively easy to create because it's all done virtually. But in live action, the scope of the cinematography is highly limited by the physical limits of filmmaking and the sheer cost of photorealistic special effects. That's an undeniable fact. There is no chance a live-action remake could look as good as the original films. So again, I ask, why should I be interested in watching a downgraded version of this story? I just despise this idea that animation is inherently inferior to live-action filmmaking, and that every piece of animation has to be made better, enhanced with realism. And I hate that people are somehow convinced that live action is a richer, more fulfilling experience when it's been proven time and time again that's simply not the case. It's this lie that keeps audiences coming back to these remakes again and again despite their extremely poor track record. Look, I understand that a good portion of people will strongly disagree with everything I've said. I'm sure a lot of people are really excited to watch this remake, and that's fine. I'm not here to police what you watch. If you want a remake of How to Train Your Dragon and every other animated thing you like, go ahead. I'm not gonna judge. However, for me, I see these remakes as ugly cash-ins attempting to bank off our nostalgia. They're almost never good, and they're certainly a far cry from being superior to their source material. I don't need a live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender, or a live-action Death Note, or a live-action version of every classic Disney movie I watched growing up, or whatever else, because they're downgrades. I'm not interested in seeing a lesser version of something I think is already great. Anyway, see ya.